What if I was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome in 2024 by Richard Woods at London South Bank University, PhD student, and I am currently on a gap year? So, yeah, um, a bit about my perspective. I was diagnosed with Asperger syndrome in 2012. I am currently trying to use a post-autistic identity, which basically means I'm trying to base my identity independent of psychiatric categories like Asperger's or autism or ADHD, etc. I do meet Elizabeth Newton's PDA profile, but I am not emotionally attached to it. I am part of the critical autism/disability studies group at London South Bank University. And as I said, I'm on a gap year from a PhD. I am the project lead for the PDA special issue in Frontiers in Education, and I do peer review PDA manuscripts. So let's move on a bit. I do have some conflicts of interest on PDA, such as developing various tools related towards it. I do get some income from delivering training sessions on PDA. Oh, you should ignore a bit about Damien Milton being my supervisor. That's not relevant to this video, but and I do reluctantly advocate for PDA to be diagnosed as a standalone construct. So yeah, moving on. So this should be a relatively short video, about maybe 10-15 minutes at the most. So it's going to talk a bit about Asperger syndrome and the other DSM-4 subtypes. That's autism subtypes. Problems with the DSM-4 autism subtypes, and then a thought experiment using Dr Michael and Dr Todd. Some reflective questions for the conclusions, and yeah, I just got a quick note to say that as part of my feedback for my talk in December, one of the people reviewing it said that all the citations are on demand. So I've switched from Harvard to Numeric style for this video. I'm going to try to use Numeric style going forward with my videos and conferences, just to kind of declutter the slides a bit. So yeah, references are still at the end of the talk as per usual. So yeah, this is the DSM-4 pervasive mental disorders diagnostic grouping. So that was from 1994. Yeah, and the DSM-4 is it's the American Diagnostic Manual. Well, from the mid 1990s to 2012ish. So you'll see there's 5 different circles. These two on the outside are not considered to be part of the autism spectrum, so they're not considered to be part of the autism they're not considered to be autism subtypes, but they are considered to be within this diagnostic grouping. So that's Rett syndrome and childhood disintegrative disorder, while the 3 autism subtypes were Asperger syndrome, autistic disorder, and pervasive mental disorder not otherwise specified, which is when people who do not meet threshold for either of Asperger syndrome or autistic disorder are diagnosed with PDD-NOS. The DSM-5, which is the current diagnostic manual from the American Psychiatric Association, says that pervasive mental disorder not otherwise specified was the most common out of the 3 autism subtypes to be diagnosed. So a bit more about Asperger's. It's got a connotation attached to be using those with average or above average intelligence. The main differential marker between Asperger syndrome and autistic disorder is that if you had speech delay, you were meant to be given autistic disorder instead of Asperger syndrome, but that was not consistently used in clinical practice. So moving on to a bit about why these DSM-4 subtypes were not carried on into the DSM-5. So the DSM-4 autism subtypes were inconsistently used in clinical practice. So there's a relatively important study which basically looked at 11 sites diagnosing autism in the USA, and they found that the best predictor for which subtype was being used was which clinic a person attended. So it's also more broad than that. Like empirical research was saying that was consistently failing to differentiate between the subtypes, and there was a lack of evidence for differential treatment between the 3 subtypes. And finally, the 3 subtypes were excluded from the DSM-4 to help reduce stigma for all autistics. So now currently we have a single autism spectrum disorder diagnosis within the DSM-5 and the DSM-5 TR. So yeah, moving on a bit. So yeah, many autistics disagree with the use of functioning labels like autistic disorder or Asperger syndrome or low functioning autism or high functioning autism, partly due to the problematic stereotypes created by the use, and that's both for people with being viewed at being the high end of it and both for people being viewed at the low end of it. So, for example, people at the low end are often assumed to be unable to advocate for themselves and unable to assert their self-agency. While people at the other end, such as with Asperger syndrome, their difficulties can be dismissed because they're meant to be high functioning and highly capable. So this is a quote from the 2015 England Autism Strategy about Asperger syndrome. So it says this is particularly important for some people with autism, including those with Asperger syndrome, who may face very significant challenges in their everyday lives despite having an average or above average intelligence quotient score. But so yeah, we're going to start getting into the thought experiment here. So some of you might know that I'm a relatively big fan of Stargate Atlantis. So this is an image of Michael, who was he's got a bit of complicated history in the show, but he's one of the recurring bad guys with a bit more complex. He's one of the more complex ones anyway. So yeah, welcome to Dr. Michael. This is a photo from when he found out that he was previously a member of a vampiric space alien force species that sucks humans' life force out, and he was then turned into a human, hence the horror on his face. So the thought experiment is what if Dr. Michael here diagnosed me with Asperger syndrome in 2024 instead of autism spectrum disorder? So this is Dr. Todd, who's sitting in the chair at the moment. He is one of their kind of frenemies in Stargate Atlantis. So sometimes he can be enemies, sometimes he can be friends. This is from, I think this photo is probably from First Contact. This name of the episode. And Todd is the one sitting in the middle chair here. So yeah, so Dr. Michael sends me off into the world with an Asperger syndrome diagnosis. I still struggle in my day-to-day life. I somehow, for whatever reason, come across Dr. Todd, who disagrees with Dr. Michael's Asperger's syndrome diagnosis to dismiss my daily struggles, claiming as I have Asperger's, I must be highly capable. And Dr. Michael blames Dr. Todd for ignoring their Asperger's syndrome diagnosis and for not taking my struggles seriously. So, just some reflective questions on the topic. Who has ethical responsibility for this situation? Potentially does Dr. Michael for using a problematic and controversial diagnostic category such as Asperger syndrome when Dr. Michael could have used autism spectrum disorder? Or does potentially Dr. Todd for not respecting Dr. Michael's clinical opinion? Or do potentially both Dr. Michael and Dr. Todd share ethical responsibility for the situation? So, I accept that this thought experiment is not a perfect analogy for diagnosing PD profile of autism. Yet there are similarities between Asperger syndrome and PDA profile of autism, so that's pathological demand-avoidance profile of autism. Similarity in terms of lack of evidence are both controversial. They've both got problematic stereotypes associated with them, blah, 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 etc., etc. So the final reflective question is what can we learn from this thought experiment about the potential ethical responsibility of clinicians diagnosing PDA profile of autism? So these are my contact details, like my email, my Twitter handle, my ResearchGate link to... I think I'm going to be putting the slides for this video up on my ResearchGate, and you should be watching this video on my YouTube channel, so going down. There's only 6 references, and they are in Numeric, so they're in the order in which I used them in. So I'm not going to linger on too long because you should be able to access them through the slides or pause the screen. So yeah. Oh, and I've slightly changed the wording in my end kind of sign-off thing because I'm trying to reduce the demand that one could perceive in it. So I've replaced your with one's So may one's stimming activities be many, not buy, be many, and one's flow state's long, equivalent to live long and prosper. So yeah, that's a B, not a buy. Um, but yeah, that's it. So I hope you have a good time, and I hope you find this video helpful and informative. Stop.